The words hit before he even sat down. "We're moving in a new direction, Marcus, and your approach no longer aligns with our future." No warning, no sidebar, just Kelly Barrett, the new CEO, announcing his termination in front of 12 department heads during the quarterly Zoom call. Marcus Dane blinked once, his camera still on. Around him, a grid of stunned faces froze. Some looked down, a few pretended to type. He sat motionless in his home office in Mesa, Arizona, the morning sunlight cutting a harsh line across his desk. His job, Director of Supplier Operations at Stonefront Materials, gone in the time it took her to say it. Kelly kept talking, something about modernizing our procurement pipeline and leveraging digital tools for supplier synergy, but Marcus had already muted his mic. After 6 years of building the company's supplier network from scratch, he was being tossed aside like last week's freight report. "I understand," Marcus said evenly when she finally paused. That was all. He closed his laptop, rose from his chair, and began boxing up the tangible reminders of a career that had kept cement pouring and bulldozers moving across the Southwest. Vendor maps, site plans, a photo of him shaking hands with a quarry owner in Flagstaff after a storm delay had nearly derailed a $12 million. Kelly had been with the company just 10 weeks. She wore fitted blazers and quoted efficiency metrics, but had never once visited a supplier yard or sat in a dispatch truck cab at 4 a.m. Her playbook was clean and theoretical. Marcus's had been forged through diesel fumes, missed calls, and loyalty earned with sweat, not spreadsheets. 2 hours later, he drove west, past the edge of town, past the highway cloverleaf, and into open desert. He pulled over at a roadside bluff and stepped out. Below, the sun shimmered off an old stone plant where he'd once negotiated a year's worth of gravel for half the going rate just by remembering the owner's daughter had leukemia and showing up with lunch. "Congratulations on your freedom," he said aloud to no one, watching the dust trails of semi-trucks moving across the plains. He didn't feel broken. Not yet. But something inside him, steady, quiet, had started to shift. 6 years ago, Stonefront Materials had been a dusty dream with rusty trucks and a balance sheet held together by duct tape. Marcus remembered the day he first walked into the company's original headquarters, a double-wide trailer parked next to a half-dead cement batch plant on the edge of Prescott Valley. George Levinson, the founder, was an old-school contractor with cracked hands and a whiteboard full of missed deliveries. "I need someone who can fix this supply mess," George had said bluntly, stabbing a marker at a list of delays that read more like a disaster log than a logistics plan. "You military guys understand structure. Think you can build me one?" Marcus, fresh off a 12-year run in Army logistics, looked around and saw not chaos, but potential. He didn't promise miracles, he promised reliability, and then he delivered. That first year, Marcus lived on the road. He ate vending machine dinners in motel rooms, shook hands in gravel pits, and learned more about regional trucking routes than most dispatchers knew in a lifetime. He didn't just secure suppliers, he built alliances. Quarry owners, small batch cement mixers, independent haulers. He got to know their constraints, their priorities, their people. Some had operations so small that a missed payment could mean shuttering their doors. Marcus never missed a payment, never missed a call, and he never forgot a name. By year 3, Stonefront had become a quiet force in the Arizona construction sector. Thanks to Marcus's vendor network, they could guarantee materials when no one else could. During the 2021 Southwest concrete shortage, Marcus's long-built relationships kept trucks moving while competitors paid triple and still waited. Contractors started requesting Stonefront by name, not for price, but for peace of mind. The numbers told the rest. Revenue up from $6,500,000, 0 cents, to $14 million, 0 cents. Project delays cut by 70%, and a 92% supplier retention rate in an industry known for churn. George called him the backbone of the operation. But that was before George sold the company to a New York investment group last spring. They promised expansion, funding, a brighter future. Then came the consultants, the rebranding, the jargon. "We want to unlock Stonefront's hidden scalability," one of them said in a town hall. Marcus knew then it was only a matter of time. They didn't want a system built on people. They wanted one built on platforms. Kelly Barrett's arrival sealed it. She wasn't there to grow what worked. She was there to gut it and dress it up for sale. And Marcus, he'd seen this pattern before. He just hadn't expected to be its first casualty. The silence didn't last long. By Tuesday morning, Marcus's inbox was filling up. Subject lines like, "What happened?" "He heard the news," "Say it ain't true," and "Need to talk urgently." Some were from Stonefront's former vendors. Others came from field supervisors and regional dispatchers who had worked alongside him through supply crunches, winter floods, and 4-day cement shortages. He didn't respond at first. He just read. One message came from Terry Mendoza, the manager of High Ridge Aggregates. "Her people don't even know our production schedule. They asked for a 6-week volume quote and didn't know we shut down in December for equipment maintenance. You always remembered that?" Another from Donna Ing, an independent hauler who'd worked with Marcus for 5 years. "They changed the fuel surcharge policy without notice. I'm out $3,000 this month. Thinking about walking away from the contract." The pattern was clear. Kelly's team had replaced field knowledge with software prompts, and it wasn't working. Marcus hadn't lifted a finger to interfere. He hadn't made a single call to any vendor or contractor, but the waves were already forming behind him. He didn't need to orchestrate anything. The system they'd installed didn't respect people. By Wednesday, an old friend from a former supplier joked, "We always said if they lost you, they'd lose the glue. Looks like the seams are cracking." Marcus sat on his back porch that night, scrolling through message after message, each one confirming what he already suspected. Stonefront was heading for a storm, and fast. He opened a notebook and started jotting down names, not to retaliate, to prepare, because what was breaking at Stonefront wasn't about technology or budgets or operational efficiency. It was about trust. And once trust was gone, even the most polished system couldn't deliver a load of gravel on time. He stared out at the lights flickering across the valley below. Somewhere, trucks were still rolling because of routes he designed, relationships he built, handshakes he'd honored. And the people driving those trucks, they didn't forget who kept his word when the margins were thin and the deadlines were brutal. And they sure as hell wouldn't forget who didn't. The offer came from someone Marcus hadn't seen in years. Evelyn Harper, CEO of Summit Core Infrastructure, a mid-size but rising star in Arizona's commercial build sector. The email was short, just a subject line that read, "Lunch? We need to talk." Marcus met her 2 days later at a quiet diner in Sedona. She got right to the point. "We're expanding faster than we can manage," she said between sips of coffee. "Our material deliveries are a nightmare. Our supplier network's shallow, fragile. I've lost 4 projects in the past quarter because trucks didn't show." Marcus listened without interrupting. "We need someone who knows how to build from scratch," Evelyn continued, "and not someone who's going to throw software at the problem. We need you, Marcus, The way you did it at Stonefront, but better." He looked down at his black coffee, steam curling into the air. He hadn't planned on jumping back in so fast, but this wasn't about revenge. It was about purpose. "You'd have full authority," Evelyn added, "budget control, contract sign-off, even travel approval. We don't need flashy, we need functional, and we're willing to pay for it." Marcus nodded slowly. "One condition," he said. "I get to meet every vendor face to face. No Zooms, no automated outreach. I shake hands, I walk the yards, I ask questions." "Done," she said without hesitation. That week, Marcus started building again. He began with the suppliers who'd stood by him at Stonefront, those who were already fed up with Kelly Barrett's new regime. He didn't steal them, he just called, listened, asked how things were going. Every one of them remembered him, and every one of them responded the same way. "Where do you need us, and when?" Within 30 days, Summit Core's late delivery rate dropped by half. By day 45, their biggest competitor missed out on a bid because Summit Core had cornered the region's only ready-mix capacity for the next 3 months. Evelyn was floored. "I don't know how you did this so fast," she said during a weekly review. Marcus simply shrugged. Respect travels faster than trucks. As his new team expanded, Marcus personally trained each member, teaching them what he called the 3-tier rule. Show up, speak plain, solve the other guy's problem first. It wasn't revolutionary, it was just real. And in a world drowning in dashboards and data dumps, real was suddenly a competitive advantage again. The cracks weren't subtle. Within weeks of Marcus's departure, Stonefront began to stumble, first with small delays, then with full-blown disruptions. Terry Mendoza from High Ridge Aggregates texted him late one night. They sent a junior coordinator who didn't even know what washed stone meant. I walked him off the lot. From the outside, the company still looked operational. Internally, it was chaos. Word spread quickly in the tight-knit supplier community. Kelly Barrett's new vendor platform required logins, multi-step digital quote systems, and removed all direct phone access. What once took a 5-minute call now required 3 emails, 2 approvals, and a spreadsheet. Suppliers didn't complain. They just left. By the end of month 2, 2 major contracts were delayed. One of them, an industrial park foundation pour, missed its concrete window and had to be rescheduled entirely, costing the client nearly $300,000. Inside sources kept Marcus quietly informed. A former dispatcher forwarded him a memo marked URGNT in bold red. Weekly delivery delays now exceed 29%, customer satisfaction down 22%, vendor complaints logged with legal. He never responded. He didn't gloat. But the writing was clear. Stonefront was bleeding out, and the bandages they were applying were made of jargon and denial. Then came the layoffs. When Stonefront cut 25 warehouse and logistics staff without notice, contractors began pulling out of long-term agreements. Loyalty had never been written into the contracts. It had been written into the way Marcus did business. Kelly Barrett, meanwhile, doubled down. She brought in another consultant group to re-engineer the supplier onboarding process and reduce lead times by 35% via smart contract implementation. On paper, it looked innovative. In practice, suppliers were now billing late fees and demanding prepayment. Contractors whispered that Stonefront had become unreliable. Truckers began rejecting their jobs, and suppliers, they were quietly redirecting capacity to Summit Core. None of it was sabotage. Marcus hadn't made a single demand. He'd simply stayed out of the way and let nature run its course. Because a company built on trust can't be managed by a system that doesn't believe in people. And Kelly, she was starting to learn that the hard way. It was Evelyn who first floated the idea. They were reviewing Summit Core's growing supply capacity when she paused, looked up from her notes, and said, "We need more infrastructure. What if we didn't build it? What if we bought it?" Marcus leaned back, narrowing his eyes. He already knew what she was thinking. "Stonefront?" he asked. She nodded. "They're flailing. I've seen the reports. Their overhead's bloated, client retention's collapsing, and if their Q3 margins fall any further, their investors will panic. We could get the entire operation." Marcus didn't answer right away. The idea was bold, almost poetic. He didn't want revenge, but the thought of rescuing the company from itself and saving the people left behind lit something deep within him. They agreed to move discreetly. Evelyn brought in a third-party broker, a private shell entity with no visible ties to Summit Core. The message to Stonefront's private equity backers was simple: a quiet acquisition offer, below market value, before public filings revealed the damage. The response came within 48 hours. Desperation. Not only were the investors willing to talk, they were eager. The company was bleeding contracts faster than they could pivot. Cash flow was tight, and with layoffs already in motion, the board feared a full-scale collapse. No one asked who was behind the bid. No one questioned the timing. It was happening. 3 months after being publicly fired, Marcus Dane was on the verge of returning not as an employee, but as the architect of a buyout. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just stared at the old map of Stonefront's yards and facilities on the wall of his home office, the one he hadn't taken down. "Let's bring it home," he said to Evelyn. "But we do it right. We save what's worth saving and leave the rest behind." Evelyn nodded. "Start drafting the transition plan." Marcus arrived at Stonefront headquarters precisely at 8:55 IEMN, 3 minutes ahead of the scheduled acquisition meeting. He wore the same leather boots he'd worn every day on the job, polished not to impress, but out of respect for the place he'd helped build. Evelyn Harper walked beside him, calm and composed, trailed by their legal team and a finance officer from Summit Core. The receptionist greeted them with cautious courtesy, unaware of their... They stepped into the glass-walled boardroom where the investors sat waiting. At the head of the table sat Kelly Barrett, crisp suit, crossed arms, still exuding confidence, but her eyes flickered when she saw Marcus. For a full 2 seconds, she said nothing. "You?" she finally asked, voice tight. "You're behind this." Marcus didn't flinch. "I'm here on behalf of Summit Core, who now owns 82% of Stonefront's controlling interest." "This is a setup," she snapped. "You orchestrated this just to get back at me." Evelyn calmly opened a folder. "This is a transaction. Your investors agreed. You were bleeding clients, supply lines were collapsing, and leadership couldn't course correct." "I was fixing it," Kelly began, but one of the lead investors, Martin Crowley, interrupted her. "Nay, Kelly, you were spinning." Kelly looked around the room for backup, but found only blank stares and silence. "Your services," Avalon said coolly, "are no longer needed during the transition. You'll be paid out per the terms of your agreement." Kelly stood, jaw clenched. "This isn't over." Marcus finally spoke. "Actually, it is. You thought trust could be automated, that vendors would stay loyal out of convenience. You were wrong. You treated people like parts, but I built this company on relationships, ones you dismissed without understanding. She stared at him, trying to muster a response, but found none. Then, without another word, she gathered her papers and walked out, her heels echoing down the hallway. As the door clicked shut, Evelyn turned to Marcus. "You good?" He nodded once. "We've got work to do." The investors stayed, ready to finalize what had become their only viable exit strategy. And in Marcus Dane, he wasn't back for vengeance. He was back for restoration. The first week after the acquisition, Marcus didn't sit behind a desk. He walked the yards, shook hands with forklift operators, sat in break rooms, listened more than he talked. Word spread fast. Marcus is back, but not just back, in charge. The tension that had haunted the halls of Stonefront for months began to lift, cautiously. He started by rehiring Carlos Vega, a veteran dispatcher who knew every delivery route in Arizona by memory and had been let go during the third round of optimization. Then came Andrea Hill, a former vendor liaison whose relationships had once saved the company millions in penalties. Within 3 weeks, 21 key staff members had returned. The company didn't just get its people back, it got its memory back. But Marcus didn't rebuild blindly. He merged the best of Summit Core's efficient systems with the soul of Stonefront's relationship-driven model. Inventory software now had human backups. Contracts had clauses for flexibility, not just control. Vendor meetings returned to in-person visits, and Marcus personally called every major supplier within his first month back. The change was immediate. Delivery reliability rose by 37%. 3 former clients reopened contracts. High Ridge Aggregates, once on the verge of cutting ties completely, extended a multi-year deal. The company's name changed, too. Corefront Materials, a symbolic blend of Summit Core's precision and Stonefront's foundation. Evelyn honored her word. Marcus received an equity stake in the newly combined company, a formal recognition of both legacy and future leadership. But to him, the real reward was seeing workers walk with purpose again, suppliers return with trust, and contracts signed not just on terms, but with handshakes. One afternoon, Andrea walked into his office, holding a signed renewal from Valley Ready Concrete. They said, and I quote, "She grinned, 'Thank God the grown-ups are back.'" Marcus chuckled. "Then let's make sure we never leave again." As the sun dipped behind the yard's steel silos, Marcus stood on the overlook outside his office, watching trucks roll out with fresh shipments, on time, every time. He didn't feel triumphant, just grounded. This wasn't revenge, it was redemption. He hadn't needed to sabotage anyone. Truth had done the work for him. When people forget the value of trust, of doing things the right way, someone has to remind them, not with ego, but with proof. The lesson was simple. Systems don't build loyalty, people do. And when you lead with respect, the results will always follow. This story reminds us that leadership isn't about buzzwords or flashy systems, it's about people. Marcus Dane didn't fight dirty or seek revenge. He stayed true to his principles: build trust, show respect, and let your work speak louder than titles. In a world obsessed with automation and speed, he proved that real success still comes from human connection, not spreadsheets. When relationships are dismissed as inefficiencies, even the strongest companies can crumble. But with quiet resilience and unwavering integrity, Marcus reclaimed what was lost and built something better. The lesson is clear. Respect isn't outdated, it's a competitive advantage. And character, that's what holds everything together when the systems fail. If this story moved you, made you think, or reminded you of someone who deserves better, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video to support more real stories of redemption and resilience. Subscribe to our channel so you never miss the next one. Share this story with a friend or coworker who believes that doing things the right way still matters. Because sometimes the best revenge is rebuilding better.